Hey guys, Tom here. In this video, I'm going to give you my top tips on getting the best out of ADHD without medication. So tip number 1, exercise.
Will you put your goddamn dumbbells down for a second?
See, with our ADHD brains, we typically have lower dopamine levels because our brains are chemically different, which results in us becoming very easily distracted and looking for those dopamine hits in different things constantly. Now, there's been studies done on this, and the best way to get that dopamine hit and to get that adrenaline hit, do some exercise. And whether that be through short, intense interval training, up to going for a run, whatever your exercise of choice, just make sure you get it in daily, because it can be a game changer to sustaining those levels of focus throughout the day. And I've noticed this so many times when I've gone without having exercise, I'm just constantly fidgeting, I feel anxious, I can't focus on anything. Tip number 2, sometimes you just need to swallow your pride. And what I mean by that is that we need to recognize the things that we are good at and the things that we aren't so good at. So to give you an example, recently my finances are all over the place. You might be able to relate, but I've been spending money, taking out loans, credit cards, because every time I see something new, I need to have it in my life right at that very moment. And there's these moments of compulsion where you see something and you feel like you just need to buy it then and there. There's no waiting. So I've sort of come to terms with the fact that I'm not good with managing money. Luckily for me, my girlfriend's an accountant. So whilst we might not be good at some things, and it is important to, if you're not good at something, outsource it, ask for help, get somebody to help you with it. But just remember all the things that we are good at and focus your attention on creating and harnessing those things. Tip number 3, avoid distractions at all costs. Oh shit, sorry. Ooh, selfie stick. I still haven't read this book. Maybe I should do some yoga. Keep distractions to a minimum. I know it's easier said than done and it sounds obvious, but one of the biggest tricks that I learned is just to minimize the amount of clutter that you've got on our workspace. And typically you see this all the time with people with ADHD. Me personally, my workspace is always cluttered because I feel like I need to have instant access to everything then and there, but you don't. If you want to focus on a task, you need to minimize the distractions around you, because otherwise it's going to be incredibly difficult to focus. It sounds simple, but it's incredibly effective. Tip number 4. Now this might be controversial and it might sound a bit counterintuitive, but meditation. Now this isn't going to work for everyone, but I know a few people with ADHD that has worked incredibly well for, and it's also worked really well for me. And meditation can be hard at the best of times, right? And for someone with ADHD, it can be pure torture to begin with. However, if you stick with it, it's like anything. And whilst our brains are wired differently and we might have chemical imbalances in a few areas, if you can practice taking your mind and focusing on something for a long period of time, it's like a muscle. It's going to build over time, and gradually you will have, and you'll find you have more sustained focus on certain tasks. You are going to have days where you can't focus at all, you know, you have it all the time, we have bad days, but you will find that over time that muscle becomes stronger and you are able to focus on things longer. There's some incredible apps out there, things like Headspace, which is a brilliant app which takes you through some guided meditations. There's also a bunch of YouTube meditations that you can do for increased focus, increased productivity, switching from tasks, whatever it might be. Not that we really need any help switching from tasks. Tip number 5. Find the things that make you hyper-focus. If you haven't heard of that term before, I'm pretty sure if you've got ADHD, you would have experienced it. You know those moments where you just spend all day on something. Yep. That is hyperfocus. With ADHD, we have an incredible ability to pretty much shut out the rest of the world around us. And while this might not be good for all things, and it can cause a bit of conflict between spouses, partners, friends.
What happened to you? Where have you been?
My best piece of advice here is find the things that make you hyper-focused. For me, it's creativity, it's creating stuff, it's making things. And when you find that thing you enjoy, you can really focus in on it and you can become unstoppable at that thing. And then here's arguably the most important thing, is to find ways to integrate that into your daily life. So if it's the act of being creative, if it's the act of doing things differently, look at ways you could potentially integrate that act into your current day-to-day jobs, into your current roles, maybe making a few changes to try and integrate that. And this is where it's important to speak to people and make sure people understand, so that, you know, your colleagues, your boss, your parents, your friends, your spouse will work with you on helping you integrate those things in day-to-day life and be understanding of your need to do that and the results that you're going to get from doing that. So guys, I really hope that's helped. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, and if you like the video, give it a thumbs up. And I'd love to hear your comments, feedback, thoughts, or any suggestions that you might have on dealing with ADHD. So leave a message in the comments below and I'll get straight back to you. Now, just a disclaimer here, I'm not saying that you should stop taking your medication if you are already on medication. I used to take Ritalin when I was at school. Teachers used to spoon feed it to me with jam because that's how much I didn't want to take it. But I was taken off of Ritalin mainly because my parents thought it was turning me into a vegetable, and I think Ritalin's now been replaced by some safer alternatives. But please, 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 this is not medical advice. I'm not a trained specialist, so do not go against your doctor's advice if you're currently on medication. You still here? Maybe you've just got distracted by something. Either way, I want to give you a few bonus tips that have really helped with productivity. Number one is keeping a calendar and sticking to it. In those moments when you're in hyper-focus, it's really, really, really important that you're scheduling out time and hours in the day to stick to a particular task, and then setting reminders. Here's the key: setting reminders, alarms, whatever it takes to take yourself out of that task and onto something else, because otherwise you potentially lose days and even weeks on a particular task that just isn't important anymore. Plan out your priorities each day or each night, whatever works for you, and schedule out time in your calendar. The second thing that's really helped me, turning off notifications on my phone for things that I just don't need. Things like WhatsApp, Facebook, Twitter, messages. I don't need them for work. I don't need them to get things done. They're just a distraction for me. It might be different for you, but you can choose what notifications you turn off. But the things that are draining your time throughout the day, that just create distractions, switch them off. Turn the notifications off. Put a block, put an app block on the phone if you have to. But just minimize any distractions. This has helped me massively with my productivity. I've set certain times in the day where I'm checking certain apps, so I'm not constantly looking at my phone, checking those notifications every time the phone buzzes or pings. I've completely got rid of that, so I only check it at those set times throughout the day. This has been huge for me. So give it a try. I'm done now, I promise. Subscribe to the channel up there. If you want to stick around, feel free. If so, I'll see you in the next video.